So there's a lot of people in here. I'm not nervous at all, I promise you. I'm going to give you a scenario. I want you to imagine that you're leaving a correctional facility after spending a significant amount of time incarcerated, and you're starting your life again. One, you'll have limited access to affordable housing, so a number of you will spend at least a few nights in places like this. Two, you're going to have a really difficult time finding an employer who wants to hire you. Three, some of you will be trying to get by in one of the 13 states that still does not extend SNAP benefits or food stamps to people convicted of drug felonies. Four, during your first 2 weeks after release, as a former state prison inmate, your risk of death is roughly 13 times higher than that of other state residents. And for those of you who remain alive, within 5 years of release, roughly 3/4 of you will be rearrested, with more than half of you being rearrested by the end of your first year after release. The fundamental fact after serving your time is that the world you're going back to doesn't look like the one you left. Your connections to your community, if you ever had them, have essentially disappeared. And the ties that do remain are often the very ties that got you locked up in the first place. Now, this scenario is a collection of recurring themes that I came across last summer as a summer public health scholar at Columbia University. I was completing a literature review analyzing the relationship between mass incarceration and HIV. I'd begun enveloping myself in every piece of related literature that I could find. That's books, academic journals, articles, anything. Crowded subway cars became spaces to explore my topic, and the screech of subway brakes punctuated the process of discovery. What became abundantly clear in that summer is that the formerly incarcerated are at far too great a risk of suffering severe physical and mental harm or of entering a vicious cycle of re-incarceration. And many of those horrible things occur when the primary part of one's punishment is supposed to be over. People are falling the hardest when they should be getting back on their feet. Our country is grappling with the monetary and the human costs of mass incarceration. So we're slowly transitioning from a punitive paradigm of justice to one that is rehabilitative, from retribution to rehabilitation. If we're ever to achieve a more merciful, restorative paradigm for justice, one that functions for us, all of us, everyone in this room and outside of this room, we have to commit to rectifying the brokenness in people's lives that's created by incarceration. Tonight, I want to propose to you all something for doing just that. It builds on an idea called reentry navigation, and it employs the help of reentry navigators. It's a way of reintegrating the formerly incarcerated by leveraging accompaniment and guidance. And the mechanism works by addressing two of the primary difficulties that the formerly incarcerated face: inability to build and restore social capital, and the related difficulty of navigating the complexities of life after incarceration. The idea is that each former inmate will be paired with a reentry navigator. You can consider a reentry navigator as a repurposed parole or probation officer, with the one major difference being that reentry navigators don't punish and they don't control. They connect. So, who will the navigators be? They'll be former inmates. Who knows the plight of the formerly incarcerated better than the formerly incarcerated? They'll be locally based because we want navigators who know the spaces they're helping people navigate. And they'll be well trained because this work requires that the navigators know the complexities of the systems they intend to help people navigate. This is someone who can assist you in applying for a job or for Medicaid, accompany you to important hearings or appointments, help you identify personal and professional goals, or simply share a meal with you. This navigator position also provides a clear path for re-entering the workforce for the formerly incarcerated navigators themselves. The relationship is intended to be mutually beneficial. So, more broadly, reentry navigators are connectors for those who have long been disconnected from our society and, in so many cases, their own humanity. But the core of this idea is that we need to retool and rethink the way we solve this part of the mass incarceration puzzle. And I've given you just one way of doing that, but we need to create more space in our collective consciousness for doing this kind of work and trying new ideas. I want you all to consider how it is that we've created so much room for retribution, for anger, and for fear, yet virtually none for mercy and for healing. But I get it to some degree. There are criminals who have done truly awful things, and I don't deny that, but this is what tough on crime looks like. And no one deserves to sleep on a cold sidewalk because they sold crack cocaine 15 years ago. It looks like this too. And as you can see, a whole lot of that. That's propped up with your tax dollars, by the way. Carving out space in our lives for mercy and healing, and in our society too, requires that we go through the difficult and uncomfortable process of radically reorienting justice, pivoting away from control and punishment toward prosperity. And this re-entry problem is as much about us as it is about them and those people. This is a matter of the patriotic as much as it is of the personal, because if we can find the political will to funnel our tax dollars into the prison industrial complex, then why can't we repurpose that tenacity towards fixing a broken system, particularly the means by which we handle the formerly incarcerated? And if we can resolve to demonize those under control of the criminal justice system, then why can't we commit to humanizing them? I remember last summer, when I was in New York, I started packing food in my backpack every morning because I couldn't stomach the thought of walking by another homeless person empty-handed. After about a week of it, you don't feel whole anymore. And how could you? The genesis of social change is about engaging with uncomfortability, because our world's problems are not about a lack of money, they're not about a lack of knowledge. No, the difference between suffering and prosperity, between oppression and liberation, between bleak todays and the most beautiful tomorrows is defined by our comfortability with other people's misery. But if our children are going to inhabit a world better than the one we did, we're going to have to get very comfortable with being uncomfortable. There's nothing comfortable about the fact that a former inmate may have to start selling drugs again so that they don't starve. And there's nothing comfortable about a former inmate overdosing on heroin because they can't get a job. None of this is for creating guilt. To say that we haven't gone far enough is only to say that we can keep going, and that we need to. So, whoever we are, no matter what we do and no matter how small it is, for all of us to be the decent people we often tell ourselves we are, we've got to do something. And I realize that all of this is daunting, but I've also realized that the architecture of our lives, of our experiences, and of our entire society is composed almost altogether of realities that were once just radical ideas. So we can't allow the numbing grip of comfortability, privilege, and too often indifference detach us from those whose lives have been utterly destroyed by incarceration. Our compassion has to connect us to those who have been disconnected. If you're a student, maybe you could start an organization that enters the formerly incarcerated back into society. Especially with your fancy degree, you might as well. If you're an employer, maybe you could be more understanding when someone checks the felony conviction box, or you could fight to remove the box altogether. So much of this problem is about us, the people in this room. But so are its solutions. Radical change is fundamentally about us, again, the people in this room. Connecting our desire for justice to our willingness to put the right pieces together, that's what matters more than anything. Thank you.